You have an inspiring story. You started your career as a frontline community mental health worker, and here we are today. You are the CEO of the very organization you started your career with. How does that feel? Was this in your mind when you first started your career? Can you share a little bit about your journey?
It's interesting because I don't think very many people end up where they thought they were going to be. In my case, I did. I remember starting when I was a frontline worker, I recognized all the things that frontline workers do, right? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? This doesn't work. Why are we like this? And then I don't think I was particularly good as a frontline worker. I wasn't good, detailed for the paperwork, and I was always thinking about, changing the world and all of these things. So I spoke with a number of people who were mentors over the years, but my father and my brother in particular, who were both accountants and MBAs, and talked about the things that were going on. And they were asking, why don't you use these tools, or why don't you use those tools? And I said, I don't know what those are. Through conversation, I remember saying to my father when I was like 23, 24, something like that, that I was going to go back to school, get my MBA, and bring business thinking into the mental health environment. I wanted to be the CEO of the CMHA. And
the rest is history. Right? So who are your role models and your mentors? You mentioned your dad, you mentioned your brother, and some others. Do you want to speak a little bit more about how they influenced you and who maybe has been the biggest inspiration throughout your life?
It's probably my father, right? And having those conversations about, I was always somebody who was wanting to change things and always thinking beyond what I was doing at the moment. And that, of course, in a family and you're trying to go to school and stuff creates challenges. Your parents prefer you got your homework done rather than dreamed about what you're going to do in 10 years. But he helped me to bring those two worlds together, right? To understand that if you want to do that in 10 years, here's the things that you need to do along the way. Keep plugging away at it, and you'll eventually get to being able to make some real change.
Do you remember how old you were when you had this idea that you wanted to change the world?
I remember doing an essay, or it was supposed to be like a book report or something, on capital punishment when I was in grade 3. And worried my parents, right? I remember them sitting down with me and saying, are you sure this is the kind of topic that a 9-year-old should be concentrating on? If we don't talk about it, we're not going to change things. So I think always been there.
Yeah. And do you recall his attitude or the questions he may have asked you that allowed you to explore your own creativity and not shut you down?
Yeah, there were a lot of how questions, because I was always 10 steps down the road, and he's always asked, well, that's good. How would you do that? How would you do that? I was also very interested in learning the reading underneath whatever I was doing, or talking about, what did you think about that? I remember having a great conversation with him when Rob Ford was the mayor, and I think I said something about, well, I don't know why he's acting like this or whatever, and he says, well, that doesn't sound like you. How would you normally approach someone who you thought had an addictions issue? And how would you think about what they do and how they act? And I thought, oh my God, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
It always challenges at that level. Questions that made you probe a little bit deeper on why you're acting the way you are, and then how you
And what does he feel about where you are today? Do you have those conversations that this is the dream I had for myself how many years ago?
Well, he passed actually just very recently, but
sorry to hear that.
He lived a very good life. So, but I do remember when I got the job, and he was in long-term care at the time, but it was posted on his bulletin board for the whole time he was there, the picture of me in the paper, getting the job that I'd always dreamed of.
It's such a proud moment, right, for any parent. And is this your dream, David, or do you have something bigger now that you're working towards?
Well, that's the funny part, because it always was my dream, and now I'm here, and I'm not sure what the next step is. I think there's probably an opportunity to do some bigger systems work. How do we truly change the mental health system to better meet the needs of of the people that are needing support, and right now more than ever. So there's probably something on that level that I'd be interested in the future, but we're still seeing amazing growth and development in the organization and across the mental health sector, and it's nice to be a part of that. So.
But mental health is your passion. That's where you're going to be.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Sure. There's a lot of stigma associated with mental health, especially in leadership. How do we make this an important topic of even conversation, or bringing awareness for leaders to become more aware and take care of their own mental health as well as their teams and their organizations?
Yeah, I think it's just starting the conversations, right? Like the more you talk about it, the more comfortable people become with talking about it more. I was in a CEO mentorship group with, it's an organized sort of process, but they have one non-profit member with 11 profit members, right? Really interesting experience. And I did it for a couple of years. But in those conversations, I talk about, all the learnings you have in mental health and stories. It was all a storytelling exercise. So somebody would come with a problem and others would tell stories about what had happened in their life that they felt would impact that person's learnings. You're not telling them what to do. You're just a story of that happened that they might be able to learn from, right? But out of that, I bet you, well, I don't want to put a number on it. Several of the people in the group reached out to me about either personal mental health concerns or mental health concerns within their family or within their colleagues. And it was just the fact of me talking about mental health as an example of things that you can learn from, and they reached out, right? And you get a lot of that. I get many calls from people that I've sort of run into in social settings that are, oh, I didn't realize you did that. Can you tell me about this? So we have to figure out how to open up those channels and make sure that people are more comfortable coming forward.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. And what drew you originally to mental health, David?
Well, so I traveling is my passion, right? In my spare time. So after university, my first degree, I traveled Europe for about 6 months, and I grew up in a small town and hadn't experienced a lot around homelessness, alcoholism. So it was as I spent time in train stations in Europe, and I, especially Eastern Europe, as it was just opening up in the 90s, and saw all of these people that I hadn't run into before, right? People with psychotic disorders, probably quite clearly. And because I was there and they're not, afraid to come up and have a chat and share a cigarette or whatever, I ended up talking to a lot of people, and it really I just thought, wow, I didn't know about this, and how can we make a change in this? And then as you go along, it sort of builds on itself. You see the challenges and the successes, and it just gets to be a little bit addictive, I guess.